Welcome to MusicTT's Reverb series. This is the Business of Merchandising edition with me. I am Gerard Ferreira, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself shortly. But let's just jump into it. Okay, so this is what we're going to be talking about. I'll tell you about myself to start off, then we talk a little bit about what is merchandising, then the benefits of merchandising, who should merchandise, how to merchandise, merchandising in Trinidad and Tobago, merchandising in Trinidad and Tobago in the digital age, tips and tricks, then I'll have a slide for helpful hints, and at the end we'll have some questions and answers if you have any questions. All right, so a little bit about me and why I'm here. I think I can't see the chat for some reason. Nothing doing. Oh, okay. Right, yes. So judging by the people who I can see in the chat, most of you should know me, but for those who don't, I am Gerard Ferreira. I've been a musician for the past about 15 years. Most of that has been me being a guitarist. I've recently started playing drums. And the two main bands that I've played guitar for have been Vox Deus and Lynchpin. Most recently, Lynchpin has been, or was, the first band to win the Wacken Metal Battle Caribbean, which was held in Suriname, which allowed us to play in Wacken Festival in Germany. We're the first Caribbean band ever to perform at that festival for thousands of people. It was a big event. And since then, that was 2016, we have performed in Amsterdam, Suriname, Mexico, and last year, 2019 was Cuba. We're actually the first Caribbean band to perform, Caribbean metal band, sorry, to perform in Cuba. And Lynchpin has been sort of changing the game a little bit since inception with our merch. We were one of the first bands to first metal bands to consistently have merch from the start. And I think that's one of the reasons why Marty asked me to do this. Another reason is that I'm also a consumer psychologist. I've been studying and passionate about consumer psychology for the past 10 years. I have my MSc in consumer psychology with business, and I've worked as a brand strategist, business development officer, a market research director, marketing and research consultant, and essentially the general manager of an event marketing and entrepreneurship agency. So I love all things marketing and all things music. So I'm getting to blend the two here. And this is just a quick slide about some of Lynchpin's merch. This is mostly recent merch, but it's just to give you an idea of the different things that we've done. Most of this is t-shirts, but we've also done wristbands, hoodies, hats, bandanas, picks, buttons, magnets, and most recently, masks because of COVID. So what is merchandising? There's a boring definition from Investopedia, which is actually a pretty good site if you want to do anything with business. That talks about merchandising being the promotion of goods and or services that are available for retail sale and figuring out your quantities and setting prices, blah, 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 blah. Merchandising for musicians is that as well. But for a non-technical definition, merchandising is simply the situation where you create items that represent you and your brand identity and appeal to your customers. Then you advertise, sell, or give those items away. So merchandising for artists or musicians is essentially turning what you do, which is recording music or performing music, into a physical or tangible item that represents you and then selling or giving it away, which is usually as a means of promoting yourself, earning additional revenue, or fostering the relationship between you and your fans. And I have some bad news for musicians who might be a bit naive right now. Your music might be great, but it is probably not going to make you much money. And that is not just Trinidad, that is across the board. It's something that a lot of artists, not just rock or metal artists, pop artists, rap artists, face this as well. They make their music, and some of them expect to get the money that they would have done, they would have gotten in the 90s or the noughties, but it just doesn't happen because of streaming and YouTube and stuff like that. But what does make you money is performances and merch. So performance fees, and even performance fees now, you don't get that much money from as you used to, but merch you definitely can get some revenue from. But there's a point to note about merchandising. Merchandising is taking a risk, and you need to minimize that risk as much as possible by being clear about your goals, having proper planning, being deliberate about what you do, meaning that you want to be firm on what you're doing, execute with confidence, and make conscious, smart moves, and having patience. Patience is very crucial because you will not be a merch sensation overnight. It'll take some time to produce and sell merch and to promote your merch, and patience will definitely help there. Two people that I admire a lot about with their merch is Jay-Z and Kanye West. Because since their early days, they understood the importance of branching out and capitalizing on their music in merch ways. So Jay-Z had Rockaware, Kanye has his fashion line. They both have alcohol, I think, and some accessory lines as well. So they're making a lot of money, maybe even more money from their merch lines than they might be making from selling their actual music. Well, I mean, Jay-Z has Tidal now, but before Tidal. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, why talk about merchandising? Or what are the benefits of merchandising for musicians? So I split this up into three categories, sort of. It all ties back to you, but I split it up into benefits to you, benefits to your existing fans, and benefits to potential fans. Oh, sorry, I'm seeing Danny saying the video is frozen. Is it? Oh, video is okay. Right. So the benefits to you as a musician for merchandising. It promotes you, your band, or your art. It reminds existing fans about you. It raises awareness of your brand to new people, potential fans. It capitalizes on existing success, meaning that if you have a song or single or video that went viral, you can do a quick run of merch and capitalize on that success and get some quick revenue. As I said, it's an additional source of revenues. Even if you don't capitalize on quick success, even if you're successful, even if you're not successful, and I'll talk about that just now as well, you can still get revenue from merch. It places your brand in positive or engaging situations. And by this, I mean, merch is something that your fans have an emotional connection to. Even fans who might, and I'll talk about fans just now, but even what I'll term the 80% fans, even those will have an emotional connection to your merch. And when that happens, they'll use your merch, even in random, ordinary, everyday situations. It still connects your merch and your brand to those situations, which will usually be positive or engaging. So it strengthens the association between your brand, meaning your artist or your band self, and those situations, and it reinforces the fans' liking for your brand. Your merchandise can also represent a timeline of your musician life. So Lynchpin has had merch since we started in 2009, and we've had merch up to, I think, well, this year we've done masks. So you can actually put all those merch items up together and see the literal evolution of the band. And finally, for you, merch represents collectibles should you do different items or prints. And these collectibles gives more opportunity for your fans to buy merch. So if you do different prints or you do different items, fans get another thing to buy, and that motivates you more to do more merch. So it becomes self-reinforcing. The benefit to existing fans is it reminds existing fans about that band that they like. And this is more true to the 80% fans. And you'll understand what I mean about that shortly. And it represents another way for fans to support you. So more than just your music or coming to shows, buying merch represents a way for fans to support you. And it acts as memorabilia or collectibles. I'm sure that if we all are into music and we do have merch from some band or some artist, that we have a t-shirt or something from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and we look back fondly on those t-shirts. So that's what I mean about memorabilia and collectibles. And for potential fans, it's a way for finding out about new bands and artists that they might like. And it's also a social badge. And when I say social badge, an example of this would be a lot of the time you might see people wearing clothes of popular bands that they don't listen to or that they may not even know properly. They might just know about the band from seeing other people wear those t-shirts. And that becomes a social badge. It becomes a way of that person telling other people, hey, I'm cool because I'm wearing this. And all this is just to say that merchandise helps you become more popular, earn money, and have a better relationship with your fans. So who should merchandise? You should merchandise. I've seen many artists and musicians doubt themselves, their status, and their success, but a little confidence, even if you fake it, can go a long way. I've seen new musicians release merch before they've even had their first gig, successfully I might add, just off of the hype of the band, who was in the band, or small clips of one or two songs. Contrastly, I've also seen stalwarts in the scene never put out so much as a t-shirt for public sale. Insert Coin is one of my favorite local bands, one of the juggernauts of local rock, and they went about 10 years without having t-shirts. Some of those 10 years they weren't playing, but I'm pretty sure people still loved them in the 10 years. And if they randomly brought out a t-shirt in those 10 years, I'm pretty sure it would have sold. So even new artists, bands, or musicians can benefit from merchandising. But you should have some excitement about you. And how do you get that excitement? It's either before playing or while you're playing. So before playing is through marketing yourself, through teasers, quality clips, or promo images, and on stage simply by blowing people away, leaving them happy and wanting more. But you need to remember that no one wants to buy merch from a band or artist that they don't know, have never heard or seen, and that no one is telling them that they should know. A good example of this is when Lynchman was in Wacken. We were on one of the first days, and we were a small band that nobody knew from the Caribbean. That band was headlined by people like Iron Maiden and Arch Enemy. So they put our t-shirts up on the same merch board as all these other big bands up in the corner, and no one bought our merch because, one, no one really knew us, and there was a big difference between when we played and when the t-shirt went up on the merch board, and a big physical distance as well. So you need to remember also that people have limited funds and will usually spend it on the more established bands that they know. You can get around this by being successful at generating excitement, but major sales will happen in time. So I want to believe that right after we played, if we had merch available outside the tent that we played in, when people saw us and they were hyped off of us and they left, we could have sold merch then. But because our t-shirt was up on a merch board somewhere in a distance, and when it went up 2 days after that, nobody bought it. So before we continue, I want everyone viewing this to do one thing right now, whether you're viewing it live or you're viewing it after the fact. Acknowledge that you are good enough. Even if you don't think that you are good, especially in relation to other people in your field, take the time to understand that you do have good, exciting qualities about yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this and you wouldn't have support. So I would like you to repeat these things out loud, and I'll explain why. So I want you to say, I am a good performer or band or artist, whichever applies to you. I am and will be well-liked. People do want to own a piece of my brand. I am worthy of this happening. And even if you start small, I am good enough to have merch. And I'm doing this because I've seen way too often bands or artists doubt themselves, even if they have been in the game for a long time, doubt themselves that people will want to buy their merch. They doubt themselves about how popular they are, about how successful they are. And it's shooting themselves in the foot. As I said before, people do want to buy your merch. So you need to admit to yourself that you are good enough to have merch. So getting into the meat of things, how to merchandise, and this is an overview. There's some steps that you have to go through. You have to know your brand, understand your audience, identify products or items for merch, design your merch, determine initial order quantities, promote your merch, sell your merch, then monitor sales and reception and adjust as needed, and then continuously repeat. It may sound or seem like a lot, but some of these you don't need to do often at all, especially those first two items. You don't need to do often at all, and some of these flow right into each other, and generally it'll become second nature. The whole process can be done in no time once you have these things down. I'll explain. I can't go absolutely in depth in these things, but I'll try to run through a bit about each of these. So how do you get to know your brand? You have to ask yourself, who are you or what type of brand you have? And to do this, you can ask some of these questions and find the answers to some of these questions. What type of music do you make? Are you local dancehall? Are you dancehall? Are you Trinidad, rap, punk, metal, fusion, soca, whatever? What type of genre do you exist in? What type of imagery do you reference? So what type of colors do you use? What elements, what visual elements do you use? And if you don't use any, what would you associate with yourselves? So I put the pictures here of Linchpin over the years. So at the top is one of our earliest band images, and at the bottom here, it's not clear, but you can see that there's a definite evolution of what we've looked like. And there's been, you can sort of see a consistent theme in the darkness and the sort of military-ishness of it. But you can see a consistent theme, but an evolution throughout years. And that is partly due to the iconography. So you also need to ask yourself, what is your artist or band personality? And what I mean by that is, do you have an artist persona, or is it you on and off stage? And your on-stage personality does not need to be your personal personality or individual member's personality, and vice versa. For example, I am one of the least metal people around. I do love metal, but I don't dress metal. I'm not metal in my everyday life. But when I'm with Linchpin, Linchpin is a very metal band. So my persona on stage needs to be metal. And anytime I'm doing something with the band, like a photo shoot or something, or an interview, I kind of have to be that Linchpin persona. And it's okay if there's a difference between your on-stage persona and you, but it's just as okay as if it's you on stage and off stage. But you need to figure out what that personality is. So whether you're goofy or funny or sarcastic or aggressive, whether you have attitude, that sort of things. You need to ask yourself, what are your band or artist values? Meaning, what do you value as an artist? So one of the reasons Linchpin formed was because we wanted to help promote the scene. We wanted to help grow the scene. We wanted to, things weren't doing so well back in 2009, and we wanted to help bring professionalism, a bit of more professionalism to the scene. We wanted to help raise the game and raise the bar a little bit. We wanted to bring an attitude to the scene of somewhat being aggressive, but being serious about things. And so those are some of the things that we value. You can also ask yourself, what is your motto or catchphrase, or what would it be if you have one? So if we go back a second, it takes a little bit. Maybe that's going back too much. Let's see, right. So if you look at the top here, next to the hat, you'll see a band and attitude on our bandana. And that was our motto or catchphrase for a long time. I think we only really dropped it with our rebranding in 2018. Yeah, I think it was 2018. So that was and it fits with what I just said about our values. So your motto or catchphrase would be something a line that is succinct but represents you or your values. And you can also ask yourself, what is the culture or lifestyle of your main audience and industry? And it's useful to relate this to your brand, because while you may have unique traits to you, like your iconography, sound, or look, etc., you'll exist within a specific broader culture and will inevitably adopt elements of that culture, such as us being in a metal culture and adopting elements of that metal culture, thus being linchpin. So after you know your brand, you need to know who your market is, meaning who is your audience. And this is where I talk about the 20% and the 80%. So your audience, I've broken up into your 20% audience, which is your main fans, and your 80% audience. And I've used this picture of us because I think it really depicts this breakdown. So if you see that after we played, this was Skyfest, we asked the crowd to take a picture with us. So just put up their hands or horns and take a picture with us. And you can see that there's a small group of people, right behind us. This will probably depict that is putting up their hands and responding to what we're doing. But if you look at the outside of those people, which is probably more people than the people actually engaging us, you'll see people hanging around, not doing much, not really paying attention. And it doesn't mean that they weren't necessarily into us, because I'm pretty sure some of them were, but they exist in that 80% of fans. So you have your 20%, which is your core fans, which is people who will come to most of your shows, who can reasonably, you can reasonably expect to support you, who will probably engage with you on social media. And you have your 80% fans, which means the rest of your fan base. These are people who may like you, but don't come to every show. They probably won't engage online regularly. They may talk about you sometimes, but not often. But it can also include people who will just come into shows to line, people who may not really like you, but come to your shows anyway because of like other bands that might be playing and stuff like that. So you need to understand who these fans are, and how you can do that is you can ask yourself some of these questions. What is their lifestyle and culture like? So what and who else do they listen to? How do they dress? What sort of brands do they like? What do they do for fun, entertainment? What do they enjoy or dislike? Those sorts of things. So you need to understand who they are as people. You can also ask yourself, how and where do they connect with your music? So do they listen to you mainly on YouTube or MP3s? Do they buy your music? Do they just rip your music from friends? And when do they listen to your music? When they are angry, happy, sad, or bored, when they want a pickup in their mood, or when they want a chill vibe, that sort of thing. You can also, or you should also look at how many men versus women you have, because you should not only think that maybe because you're in a rock band, they're going to only appeal to men. I'm sure that there are women who will like you as well. And especially when you're doing something like t-shirts that has different cuts and sizes, you should not forget that women or men exist, because there are women who will want to buy female cut t-shirts. You can also ask yourself, what is their buying behavior? By this, I mean, what is their behavior towards merch? Do they come to buy merch at shows? Do they buy merch online? Do they reach out to you to buy merch? Is it an impulse buy when they're at shows? Do they appreciate quality? Are they price sensitive? These sorts of things. And it really helps you to understand when you're doing merch, how people will buy your actual merch. So after you understand who your brand is and who your audience is, you need to identify which items fit both them and you. You should not do merch that only speaks to your brand and forgets about your audience. And you should not do merch that only appeals to your audience and does not reflect your brand. So you need to have your merch needs to be the intersect of both. And you need to have, or as I said, you need to have products that are desired by your market, but can also be a seamless fit to your brand. And you have added value. You have to add value through your merch, but you also have added value. So you add value through your merch by giving fans something, or giving your audience something that they value, something that they will use, not something that is useless. So Marta used to be in a straight edge band. They would not come up with a line of alcohol for that. Or I mean, lighters can be used for other things, but they wouldn't come out with a line of lighters. That would be a different band. So you want to come out with merch items that your fans will actually want to use. And added value, meaning that you're adding value to your fans and your audience through your merch. So you're adding value to them just coming to see you or hear your music. They get to support you, as I said, through some other means. So after you identify your merch, you need to design your merch. And how can you do that? You need to, as I said, you need to choose a design that matches your brand and stays true to your brand and who you are, but also appeal to your audience. But you also don't want to follow a trend and do whatever is trendy. And I have a real pet peeve with if you know deathcore fonts for their icon for their band logos. That is a trend. That is a trend within that culture, and it exists for a reason. But I can't look at a death metal lineup and pick a different band out of it. So for merch, you don't want to use elements or visual elements that everybody else is using, so that they can't look at something and not be able to tell whether this is your band from another band that is like you. You can also use themes from your music or performance. So you can, whether it's just your logo, because fans already think you're cool and they like your logo, or it could be a song lyric or album title or something you say on stage. So I have a t-shirt that represents that. So we have a song called Locked Insanity, and we did a t-shirt for that. So on the front is a representation of what that song is. It's not a direct representation, but you can kind of get the sense of what it is, because the song is sort of about a mental break and schizophrenia. But on the back, we have some snips of lyrics, if you can see that, from the actual song. So that is a good way to start, if you're doing merch, to start some merch off, using themes from a song or your music. You can utilize existing colors or imagery that you have. Like I said, we had existing colors for Lynchpin, which is like a dark palette. So we know that most times when we're doing stuff, it would be that sort of thing. Or we know for songs, different songs will have a different feel to them, so we can use colors from that. But if you don't have existing colors or imagery, you can think about what colors or imagery you associate with whatever chosen element you've used. So example, if you're singing about smoking herb, you don't need to directly put a big spliff on a hat, but you can come up with a line of lighters that have a bit of lyrics on them or your logo on them, or you could use greens or browns, because that might be what people associate with smoking herb. And importantly, if you don't have designing skills, I don't recommend you designing the merch yourself. I highly recommend getting a graphic artist to help you. And even if you don't know a graphic artist directly, I'm sure that you know someone who is a graphic artist that would be willing to help out. And this can be important for two or more ways. Outside eyes can give you a fresh perspective on your brand, and a designer will have a better sense of what might work for the design that you want. So it's always good to have an actual designer help out. And sometimes it's better to have someone unfamiliar with your brand, because an outside perspective can help create communication, meaning visual imagery, that people outside your inner circle will be sure to understand. Because I've seen instances where a band or artist had this really great idea that they understood themselves and they wanted to go with it, but no one else outside of them or their inner circle understood what that meant. So those outside eyes can help you to create visual imagery that will sell. So after you design your merch, you need to order your merch. Some tips here would be to start small, meaning small quantities and objects that require little psychological or financial investment from your buyers, and then gradually scale upwards. So what I mean here about psychological investment is that people who are seeing your merch don't have to debate with themselves a lot about whether they should buy this merch or not. it's easy for them to just say, yes, I want this and I want to buy it, which means that you should do merch that is either within their price range or that is a good fit with their culture or lifestyle. So again, if they wear hats a lot, you can do a hat because they would say, oh, yes, that's a great hat, and I want this hat because it represents this band, and buy that hat. If they don't wear hats at all, if you know that most of your audience don't wear hats, then and you do a hat, they have to think, will I really wear that hat, boy? Like, it looks like a cool hat, but I don't know if I really want that. I want to support the band, but I don't wear hats. That is what I mean about psychological investment. You also especially need to estimate the demand for your product. This is essential. Then you can use your initial limited run at first to gauge reception and adjust the suit. But how can you estimate demand? You can do this by mostly by looking at how many people regularly come to your shows and somewhat how many people engage with you on social media. But I would not use social media too much as a gauge because social media is a liar. Likes are likes. It's very easy for someone to like your post and they are not necessarily guaranteed to buy one of your merch items. But using how many people regularly come to your shows is a good gauge. And I'm saying regularly, often, to drive that home. You need to use the average number of people that come to your shows. If you played a show once for 1,000 people, but your average is 100 people, don't use 1,000 people as a gauge. Don't make 500 t-shirts and expect that they would sell. So you can use maybe about 10 or 20% of your average number. If you want to start small, maybe use 10% of that as your number and then scale upwards from there. If there's sizes involved, which would be like t-shirts, you need to determine which sizes will be in demand most, and then order to suit. And how you do this is by knowing your audience. So if you know that your audience is mostly medium and large guys, you can do something like 5 small, 15 medium t-shirts, 10 large t-shirts. Pardon me. And if you know that there are always women in your crowd, especially women in your 20%, then you can do some female cut t-shirts in different female sizes for them. But again, start small and scale upwards. And then you need to ask yourself where you'll get your products made. So this is either going to be local or foreign. There are some local suppliers who you can benefit from building a relationship with, depending on what you want. So if you find a local supplier and you continuously order from them, you could probably get better pricing as you go forward. You probably get things quicker, that sort of thing. If you order from an online store, you may be able to get a wider variety of products, different qualities. You might be able to get different prints, but your lead time may be more, and it may not necessarily be cheaper because shipping things in now is sort of up in the air. So you're not guaranteed that what may seem cheaper at first on the site will actually be cheaper when it's landed. Right? So after you order your merch, you need to promote your merch. And how can you do that? So I'm seeing some people here who might have done merch before. So you could put some ideas of how you've done merch promotion in the chat, and I can look at it or use some of them as examples after. But some ideas to promote your merch as follows. You can do it on stage, but not as a throwaway comment. And what I mean by this is I've seen a lot of people have great merch for sale, and then they go on stage and they say, okay, this is our next song. It's blah, 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 blah. By the way, we have merch, and then go into the song. You don't want to do that. You need to be direct, intended, and confident in your statement. So you need to say, look at this cool stuff we have. You want to get some cool stuff? Check out our merch booth. Our merch booth is in the back, next to the bar, whatever. And I've used an example from our 10th anniversary here, which is sorry for the censored part, but it exemplifies that being direct and intentional about wanting people to buy your merch. And then we have a little please there because we have some manners. You can also promote through yourself. And I know that sometimes it's not seen as cool to wear your own merch, especially with your rock fraternity, but I don't care about that, and neither should you, because you are one of the best ways for people to see what you have available, because attention will already be on you, especially when you're on stage. When you get popular or big enough, then you can maybe stop wearing your merch if you want to, but I've seen people like Pretty and of course Kanye still wear their own merch on stage. You can also do it through photo ops, and this is either through your own photo ops or somebody else's photo ops. So if you have an opportunity to get your merch worn by someone else who is popular with your audience, and that is key, it needs to be someone who is popular with your audience. So if you have a bunch of hardcore rock guys as your audience, don't get a soca artist to wear your merch, or don't get a rap artist to wear your merch, because it's not going to go over well with your fans, and they probably may not even see it. So if you have the opportunity for someone who fits with your audience to wear your merch, and this can either be through directly asking them by paying them, or if you have a good relationship with them, sending them a free t-shirt and them wearing it and posting it to Instagram or on Facebook, take that opportunity. And you can also do it through your own photo ops, and I have our photo op here as an example. So this is the Cuban ambassador to Trinidad, the woman and her husband, who is actually into rock and metal. And we met with them before we went to Cuba. So we knew that this would be a good photo opportunity. We knew that this would probably be in the papers, or we would use it online. So we took t-shirts for them, and as you can see, he was more than happy to actually put on a t-shirt and take a picture of them. So this is a good photo op that we've used ourselves. You can also do it when you have interviews and media. Written interviews, you're not guaranteed to have your comment about your merch included, because you're not in control of what will be published. But on TV and live radio interviews, if you're fortunate to have those, or on internet interviews, you can talk about your merch, and you should talk about your merch. And lastly, online, the big one. You can promote your merch on your band or artist profile, and even on your individual profiles if you're in a band. So you can post images of yourself and models, which is usually friends that you've asked for a favor, in your merch. And that's one of the best ways for people to see your merch and order directly, because they can just message you one time and say, oh, hey, I just saw this mask that you have, or I just saw this t-shirt, or I just saw this hat. I would like to buy this. You need to remember to not post once. And Lynchpin is guilty of doing this. Maybe not posting once, but posting a couple times and then moving on to something else. Do not do that. You need to post consistently, especially with your merch. Post every day or every other day if you have a new line. And if you have stock just sitting down, post every week. You need to remind people who may have forgotten about your merch that you actually have merch and that they want to get it, because people will go on and be distracted by other things. So you need to keep reminding them online. Yes, as Mariela said, the correct term is influencer marketing there, and it can really help promote your merchandise with your community. But again, you need to be consistent with who that influencer is in terms of them being on brand with your audience. And I've seen a lot of people, not just musicians, make that mistake where brand will think, oh, well, this person has a lot of likes on Instagram, a lot of followers on Instagram. Person has nothing to do, like if they're making water, the person has nothing to do with water, not even athletic. The person just has a bunch of followers on Instagram for whatever reason. And then they use that, and then you wonder why they're not getting traction from that. It's because the person is not on brand with who their target market is. So after you promote your merch, you need to sell your merch. And how can you sell your merchandise? At gigs, online. Those are maybe the two biggest ways to do it. At a gig, the gig might be your primary, well, maybe not now, but before COVID, it was probably going to be one of your primary sources of selling your merch. And what Lynchpin does is we try to, as much as possible, have our own merch setup so that we control it. So you need to ask whenever we have gigs again, if it's possible for you to set up a small merch table or area, even if it's a small little table or something like that, at least something where you can sell merch from. You can also take pre-orders, and you can take pre-orders either in person or online, but meaning that if you designed your merch, before you even get it, you'll have a mock-up of what that merch looks like. So you can either post that online and then say, hey, everyone, we have these t-shirts or these towels or lighters or whatever coming. Who wants? And then people can message you. You can also take pre-orders online. So this works probably more if you have a physical replica or a physical example of the merch. So you have it on display, and you maybe have a list or a sheet there where people can leave their contact information and say what merch item they want. Pre-orders are a good way to gauge demand for your product, and this means that you can either go back and say, I need to order more, or we know that when we do order, we'll probably have some stock settled down. Online, that's pretty straightforward. You can sell via Facebook, website, or Instagram, but we'll talk a little bit more about this in some subsequent slides. You also need to ask yourself, though, who will be selling your merch? And I know the knee-jerk reaction might be for you to sell it, or the initial reaction would be for you to sell it. But I always advise getting other people to sell your merch. Like Lynchpin always uses, you can't really see Renee at the bottom, but we always have merch girls and guys selling merch for us. And this is for two reasons. One, it looks more professional when you have other people selling your merch, so that it doesn't look like you trying to hustle people, hey, buy my t-shirt, buy my t-shirt. But it also allows you to save energy for your performance. Lynchpin had to learn this the hard way. We've manned doors ourselves and we sold merch ourselves for our shows. And then by the time, it doesn't seem like a high energy activity. It's just you stand up, taking tickets at the door and selling merch. But it saps your energy and you don't realize it. So by the time you're ready to take the stage, you have maybe half the energy that you were supposed to have to perform. So I always recommend getting someone else and someone that you trust to sell your merch. You need to remember as well that you should get people who have a good personality for selling. I don't think any of the merch girls or guys that we've had are actually into our music or into metal at all. They don't need to be. They just need to have a good personality for selling, meaning that they need to be friendly and approachable, professional, responsible with money, especially, and trustworthy. So you need to also ask yourself how you'll cost your items. I'll talk a bit more about the financial side shortly, but for now, to cost your items, you can do a review of the market. So you can see whether there are other bands selling merch as well that are of similar nature, and how much they are selling their merch for and how it compares to yours. If no one else is selling merch, like if you're the first person in your genre or your industry to sell merch, you can look at the cost of similar items that you want to sell that your fans are buying. So if you're bringing out buttons and you know that your fans like buttons and they buy buttons from this X business, you can look at how much that business is selling their buttons for and price around that. Also importantly, don't underprice or overprice yourself. Underpricing yourself meaning if other bands are selling t-shirts for $50 and you want to say, okay, well, I want to sell t-shirts and I want to undercut those bands, I'm going to sell my t-shirt for $10. Do not do this. You are devaluing yourself and people will not respect that. You may think that people will buy the t-shirt or whatever it is quicker because it's cheaper, but exactly, they'll think it's cheaper. They'll think it's cheaper quality, they will not trust it, and it will devalue your brand as well, because remember, your merch is a reflection of your brand. It's part of your brand facing. So if your merch is cheap quality or cheap, people will assume or have the perception that you are also cheap. But similarly, you don't want to overprice yourself. So if the t-shirts are being sold for $50 and you have a similar quality t-shirt, you don't want to sell yours for $300. Nobody will buy it. And they'll just think that you want to make money. They will not respect that either. But you can offer a premium for a good quality design, meaning that if you see, I think I have an example. Oh, yeah. So this same t-shirt is a good example of that. So we saw that bands had, when we created this Locked in Sanity t-shirt, had single print designs, which meaning they only had prints on the front and they were only single color. And they were selling, let's just say that they were selling their t-shirts for $50. We knew that we were doing a full color t-shirt, front and back, with our own nice logo as a tag. And it's a good quality t-shirt as well. So we knew that we should not price this around, like at the same price as those other t-shirts, $50. We knew that we could probably price that t-shirt for maybe $10, $20, even $30 more. So I think we sold those t-shirts for maybe $30 more than the other t-shirts were being sold for. So people will pay for premium, but they have to understand that there's something premium that they are actually paying for. So you have to show them what the premium is. Continuing, you have to think about how your merch will be displayed for sale. As I said, we usually carry our own table and chairs with tablecloth to have at least a semi-decent setup that we can control. We also take masking tape to write the prices of the merch onto the merch itself, or have a board with the prices so that people are not asking you all the time how much for things. You need to remember about lighting as well. A lot of the times I've seen merch areas with poor lighting, and this is horrible because people can't see how good your merch is. They can't see the prices of goods. So again, they're always asking you how much for things, and it reflects badly on the area. It doesn't look as professional. Going back to the setup though, I've seen also setups that were dirty and dingy and just not looking good enough or fit for t-shirts. Like, would you buy a t-shirt yourself that was sold in a garbage bin? No. So you need to ensure that your area is at least reflective of the brand that you are. You need to ensure that the area is at least a bit professional looking. Another tip is to keep your merch shop open until after you perform. I've seen way too many times bands close the merch area before they play, especially if they're one of the last bands. But people may be hesitant to buy merch before they've seen you play, especially if they don't really know you. Then the bands go on stage, bring the house down, and then no merch to be sold. You're leaving money on the table. So a good idea, especially if you have people selling merch for you, is to keep your merch booth open, play, and then when people are still high off of your performance, they are charged and they'll be very willing to buy merch at that point. So they'll leave and then be more likely to purchase your merch. Another idea that some people forget is to have a float. It seems like a small point, but if you're stuck without a float and somebody brings $100, then you're kind of in a monkey pants there. So a float meaning that you have some change in case somebody brings $100 at the starting night to sell the merch. Another idea is if you're performing with other acts who have merch, you can come together to have a common merch area. Especially if you trust the others, you can agree to have one person selling merch if you don't have your own merch person. But if you're doing this, you need to, well, even if you don't do this, a good idea is to reconcile your stock at the end of the night. So take stock at the start of the night, see how many t-shirts or buttons or whatever you have, and then at the end of the night, see how much money you've made and how much stock you have left to make sure that everything matches up. And as I said, at the end of the night, reconcile, but also at the end of the night, then at the end of every quarter, meaning every 3 months, you should look to see what sold best, what didn't sell, and the reasons for both. So take the learnings from these and move forward. So whether you need to restock, adjust prices, reposition your booth, promote more, lather, rinse, repeat. So now we come to the financial side of merch. Merch obviously requires money. A lot of people get excited about getting merch without realizing how much it might actually cost. So here are some common costs. Designing the merch could cost anywhere between $500 or $300 and $3,000, depending on what you want. I know $3,000 seems a lot, but a good logo with collateral can run you up to that if you get a really high quality or high class design. Because it depends on what you need, though, it can range anywhere between there. You'll also have a cost for ordering and printing the merch. And again, the cost that you have will depend on what you're ordering. So one t-shirt by itself might be $20 to $40, and you might end up paying $70 with a one-side print on the t-shirt. Chances are the people who are printing will have the merch item that you want to get. So if you want to do t-shirts or towels, hats, lighters, buttons, etc., the person who is printing it will probably be the person who has that stock. But you can also find t-shirts or whatever item you want outside and bring it to that printer and reprint it. You also need to remember that it will be a cost for clearing the goods, especially for foreign orders. And because you may not know what your final cost will be for clearing the goods, a trick that I do, and I think most people do, is multiply the final cost from the foreign supplier that's on the site by 10 to get an estimate of the landed in TT in my hand. So that incorporates the exchange rate, customs, taxes, duties, that sort of thing. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it will give you a good estimate. And you also need to think about where the initial financing will come from, whether it is you or your family, friends, or band savings. At the start, I know that it'll probably be yourself or your family and band savings. So if you know that you're going to do merch, you can say, okay, I have these performances coming up. I'll take this amount of money out of my whatever fee I get from performing. I'll use this for merch. And how do you calculate the cost that you want to sell items for? I suggest researching margin and markup. I won't get into that now, but you can do it on your own. But I will say that you need to practice breaking even, meaning that your income minus your expenses equals zero. So it both cancels each other out. If you don't practice breaking even, you can get into the habit of just putting money into merch and making a loss or getting into debt. And you definitely don't want to do that. So how do you get to your selling price? It's essentially the cost price of the one unit plus whatever you want your markup to be. And your cost price of one unit is all the costs that go into producing that one unit of your merch. There'll be some costs that are directly, that go directly to that unit. So how much you pay for the t-shirt, with the printing, but there'll also be costs such as designing that are one-time costs, and you can spread this out over the run of units that you plan to do. So, example, if your artist charges you $1,000 for your design and you're doing 100 towels, your design cost per towel is 1,000 divided by 100, which is $10. Your markup can be a percentage of your cost price as well. So, if you know that you want to have a markup of 20%, 25%, 30%, etc., you know that if your cost price is $50 and your markup is 25%, your selling price will be $62.50. Then you can go back to what I was saying before about looking at the market and seeing how that $62.50 compares to other brands or other bands and what they are selling, and you either adjust upwards or downwards. So coming to merchandising in Trinidad and Tobago. So these are some points about merchandising locally. First of all, don't buy into the negativity. There's always some sort of negativity somehow attached to when you want to do anything to be successful in this country, sadly. And I've not seen much merch for local calypso, soca, dancehall, or reggae artists. Marty could tell me, have you ever seen?
Just Kessa and Marshall.
Yeah, so the two of the biggest acts, Kessa and Marshall. Oh, so people are branching out now. Preedy has his own line, but I don't know if he has it for sale for like fans. I think it might be just for him. But for like other dancehall and reggae artists who are real big right now, I've not seen much as well. And I think there's almost a culture to sort of ignore that side of things. But I guarantee you that people would want to buy merch from you regardless of what genre you're in. And people also want to buy local more now than ever. People are into buying local. You just need to market yourself properly, and it doesn't hurt to form strategic partnerships or associations. So if you see a store that your fans like that store in Long Circular, I forget the name right now, that sells game stuff and anime stuff, and you know that your fans are really into that, you can approach them and ask them, hey, you want to sell this stuff? They'll probably have, they probably take a commission, but it's a good idea to get your merch out there to a wider audience. Oh, then he's saying he has 2 Marshall t-shirts, but hasn't seen Test for Sale. But I have seen people with Test t-shirts, right? So where did you get those Marshall t-shirts? Oh, probably from the M store, Denny. Yeah, Marshall I really respect Marshall for his merchandising, because he, especially with the chocolate line now as well, he's on point. You need to also remember that your fans do want to support you. And when enough fan support, the passives, which is the part of the 80%, will also be influenced to support you. So the same way that Denny is seeing Cass t-shirts for sale, I'm sure that Denny was like, oh, okay, I kind of wanted a Cass t-shirt. Let me see how to get one. Rochelle is saying that there are some print shops that design and print their own t-shirts. Exactly. And I'll talk about that in the helpful hints, the helpful links section as well. Another thing to remember is that people tend not to walk with money more than to buy drinks. So people tend not to walk. This is maybe a kind of old for the rock community, especially. This is maybe a little bit older, because now that people have realized that a lot of shows do have merch booths, they tend to walk with some money now. But traditionally, people only walk with money for drinks. And you need to tell them beforehand that they'll be selling merch, so they know to bring extra money. Another idea, if it's possible, is to have a links machine or a mobile card machine if you have access to one. Again, you can also take pre-orders with contact information at the gig itself and then follow up immediately. Again, the primary point of sale will probably be you or your gigs, meaning you at your gig or you online and you and your gigs, whether it's you or somebody else. You also have to keep reminding people about your merch, because trainees forget easily and move on to the next thing. So you know the whole 9-day memory that we have. So somebody might want your merch, not have the money for it, then go home, and then they distracted by whatever else, and then they forget that they want your merch. So we're going back to how you promote. You need to keep reminding people about your merch. And you can do this also, as I said, via social media. One other thing that is I hold very important, because I've seen a lot of people not do this, not just musicians, but a lot of micro and small businesses. You should have a business account for your musician or artist business, even if it is just you as an individual artist. And this does a few things. It allows you to better track how financially successful that you're being. Because if you don't have an account for this, you can just assume that you're being successful and actually be in debt. But it also saves you from commingling funds, which is actually illegal. I know that a lot, as I said, small and micro businesses do this, so that they use their own personal bank accounts as their business account. But it's not really policed, which is why more people do it. But if at some point you are policed for this, you'll end up in a monkey pants. So I suggest getting your own business account. And Lynchpin actually did this. So Lynchpin created Lynchpin Entertainment, especially because we actually throw shows and throw our own shows as well. So we created Lynchpin Entertainment, which is a separate business from the band that has the band members as partners in the business. And this business has its own bank account. And Lynchpin Entertainment is responsible for all the finances with our shows, our merch sales, performance income, expenditure on band rooms, flights, ordering merch, that sort of thing. So you also want to be cost effective with your items, because the chances are that your fans will want to buy items but not want to pay a lot for them. This is mostly going to be your 80% fans, because your core fans will be more likely to pay more for your items than your 80% fans. And you need to understand this before you decide what you'll make and how much you'll price it for. So don't go and buy some very expensive merch item and assume that people will buy it. And people locally are also hesitant to pay online for goods located in Trinidad, meaning that people will buy things online from the US all the time, but they'll be wary about using their credit cards for local retailers. You also need to know that more people than you realize don't have credit cards locally. Hopefully this is changing a bit. And I think that with the new debit cards, we can use the debit cards online as well. But traditionally, we don't have as much credit cards as we think, and people don't like using their credit cards for local purchases. They don't trust what is happening locally. Again, this is changing gradually, but it's still a phenomenon. So you might want to think about starting with online orders and doing cash on delivery. It's not the safest thing, and I recommend this as a last resort, but it might be your only resort sometimes. Everybody knows that Trinis like free thing. So don't be afraid to do small keepsake items. Lynchpin has used guitar picks, bandanas, and stickers that you can give out when people make a purchase of a more expensive item, like a t-shirt or CD. So you can keep the cost of these giveaways low, and you'll be able to cover them with the price of your larger item. So again, this goes back to wanting to break even. If you don't want to do that, or you can't do that, you can use it as, or see it as, a marketing or advertising investment. But again, I suggest not doing a lot of that. And we don't only do the keepsake items for purchases, we just have them as promotional items. So we might throw out pics when we're on stage, we might give out stickers randomly, and that also creates goodwill with your fans and your audience. People want to see, or people want what other people have, and scarce items increase demand. This is more so true across the board, more than just in Trinidad, but it's good to remember. So a good idea might be to go slightly harder for your first batch, because you know that your first batch will most likely be bought by your friends and some of your 20%. But these are all people that you know will wear your merch at your shows. And then when you do that, you can pull back a bit when the demand eventually increases, because people want, when they see other people wearing the merch, like Denny saying he saw the cast t-shirts, people will want what those other people are wearing. And scarce items increase demand. So when people see that items are running out, they'll rush for it. If PriceSmart, you know that PriceSmart having a sale on TVs now, you might want to rush and get a TV, even if you didn't want a TV beforehand. If you knew PriceSmart had TVs all the time, you were less likely to go buy a TV in PriceSmart. Trinidad is also small, and most people know each other or have each other on social media. So you can get people who have bought your merch to post to their accounts. You can even add a hashtag to it as well, and word will spread quickly because of this. So the same way that other people want what other people, that people want what other people are wearing, use your network, get your people to post all the time, or at least once, about them, with them in your t-shirts, and you'll get the word spreading. The merchandising in Trinidad and Tobago in the digital age. This is mostly all about social media, social media, social media. There are a number of platforms that you can use to merchandise, to promote, and to actually sell on. So there's Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Gmail, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, and the list goes on. But you need to know where your audience is and what platforms they are using. So you don't want to sell on Facebook if the majority of your audience is on Instagram. And a good tip here is that these platforms tend to have certain ages that are more on them. So Instagram's, most of the Instagram user base will be younger than the Facebook user base. And most of the TikTok user base is traditionally even younger than the Instagram base. So you need to see what the age of your audience is, and you can use that to gauge where they'll probably be on. But similarly, don't only stick to one platform if there are people on the other platform. So if you know that 60% of your fans are on Instagram, but 40% are also on Facebook, again, you're leaving money on the table there. So promote both on Instagram and Facebook. You might have different strategies for both, or you might have the same strategy, but don't forget about the other platforms. You can also, again, merge the digital and physical. So you can offer your items for sale digitally, but allow people to pay in person. And don't underestimate email. A lot of people just think that email is for personal use or business use. An email mailing list can be a very important and effective tool at disseminating info, getting buy-in from fans, and creating band loyalty. This week for his birthday, Marshall used his mailing list, his newsletter, to promote the song and the video that he did and some other goodies. You can also use your mailing list to offer special mailing list only discounts or features or limited runs to fans, and that way fans are more likely to engage with your mailing list. So you need to remember to be consistent and regular enough if you're using a mailing list. So don't only use your mailing list for one thing and then you have all those people that are interested in you and you don't do anything with it. We also need to talk about e-commerce solutions in the digital age. So this is either through a portal like tutulbe.com. I have to plug that because one, Giles is a big supporter, who owns the site, is a big supporter of the rock scene, but also Lynchpin has some of our merch available on the site. And these sites, I think RTTL Mall is right here on Long Circular. They're another site like that. These are sites like local Amazon versions of Amazon or eBay, where you can give them your merch, you'll put it up for sale on the site and probably take a commission on the sale. But you can also use platforms like WePay, SocialPay, TT, or WebGold if you have a website. And it's pretty easy. It's a lot easier than you think to have a website. So you can use these platforms to have e-commerce portals on your site so people can buy directly on your site and then you ship to them or deliver to them. So WePay requires you to have a bank account, I believe, especially on a registered business. SocialPay TT I'm not as familiar with. I discovered recently thanks to John. But I've heard that you're not required with SocialPay TT to have a business bank account or a bank account. I'm not sure, but you can check both, and I'll have the links for both of those at the end of the presentation. And banks like FCB, I've only heard of FCB doing this, but I want to believe that other banks, if they're not doing it already, might. JMMB is doing it as well. So they're starting to provide solutions for people to sell digitally. It's generally for small businesses, but there's no reason why you as an artist can't utilize this as well. So what they do is that they allow you to send a link that you can forward on anything, on WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, any sort of portal like that. And people click on it and they can buy your merch directly. So there are opportunities for you. So here are some random tips and tricks. People, as I said, people want what other people are wearing. And a good idea might be to get people as much as possible, as I said, wearing your t-shirts. If they see your merch being worn, they'll want, even if they don't know you, to get your merch. And there was an incident recently, I can't remember when, probably last few years, of one of the Kardashians wearing a Slayer t-shirt. And this is not an isolated incident. There are other pop stars and rock stars who don't listen to metal at all, who are wearing metal t-shirts, just because of, again, the social badge of wearing a metal t-shirt. So when people see other people wearing these clothes or your merch, they'll want to wear it and get it for themselves as well. Again, so if it might be uncool when you're starting off to wear your own merch, but do it anyway because it's the attention is on you and it's a good way for people to see your merch and get the ball rolling. You can also, again, get your friends in the crowd to wear your merch as well. Don't make it obvious that these are your friends, but when we won in Suriname, one of the biggest impacts that we had was that we had a crew go with us of about 10 people. Mark came with us as well. And they were all wearing our merch. So anytime we entered the venue, it just looked like a mass of Lynchpin supporters. And because of that, people in Suriname really wanted the merch. They came asking us for t-shirts, asking us for any kind of merch that we had. Excuse me. So that's a really good idea to do. Another tip that we also had to learn the hard way is order extra merch for yourself, because you may order 20 t-shirts when t-shirts come and you have 5 members of your band or 4 members in your band, and you say, oh, wait, these t-shirts are really cool, I want one. And then you're left with 16 or 15 t-shirts for your fans. And even sometimes your family might want t-shirts to support you. They will pay for these and not wear them. So, I mean, you can still give it to your family because you want to give them to support. But you need to remember to, if you're ordering, you know you want to order 20 t-shirts for your fans, order 25 or even 30 t-shirts so you have extra for yourselves. Going back to the scarcity concept in a slightly different way, when you're displaying or selling merch, an idea is to keep the bulk of your merch hidden away and have a few items displayed so it looks like people are buying the items and that the items will be going soon. So you don't want to put out all your t-shirts, all your buttons, all your wristbands, that sort of thing. When you put out a few of them, so people think, oh, other people are buying these. There's only a limited number of stock. Let me go buy it. And this also helps you control stock. So if you have 100 buttons out and there's a mass of people coming around you, you have to keep your eye on all those buttons. It's diverting your attention. So you just have a few of each item out available. And another idea is to try to position your merch booth, if possible, at live events, whenever we do have live events again, between the stage and the door or close to the bar. And the reason for this is because right after people see you, they're probably going to do one of 2 or 3 things. They're either going to go to the bar, go to the door to go outside to smoke or lime or whatever, or go to the bathroom. You try not to locate your booth near to a bathroom because it gives a bad perception or association. If you have to, then fine, but try not to. But putting it by the door or by the bar ensures that after people see you, they will see your merch. So they're still high off of your performance, and then they see your merch, oh, let me get some of that merch. Being by your merch booth after you perform is another really good idea because it's a good way to get people to come over, interact with you, and buy your merch. It fosters goodwill with your fans when they can come up to you after and say, hey, good gig. But it also influences them to buy your merch when they're there. 1, it attracts them to your merch booth. And 2, they say, oh, okay, I like your merch, I like what you do, I'll buy something. You should also display your items neatly and professionally. I spoke about this before, but I'll stress on it again. You should have folded clothes or hung up clothes, well laid out items. But another trick here for items like buttons or magnets or pins or anything small is to not lay it out extremely neatly. So don't, the tendency is to just do a square of buttons. What I find that people will come and they might pick it up or whatever, but 1, when they pick it up, they won't pick up in the order that you laid out. So 1, it makes things look disorganized. But 2, people may be hesitant to take things because it looks so orderly and displayed. So what I like to do is lay out my buttons. I'll start in a square and just remove some from the bottom of the square. So it looks like people are taking, and it promotes people or motivates people to actually take and pick up the items, look at the items, and they'll be more likely to buy them. Online, if it's possible, have pictures of people wearing your merch as part of your promotional images. So it's very easy to just do a ghost image, which is just the image of the merchandise item itself. But people want to see people who are like them wearing the merch. It helps them feel like, okay, I do want this item. So you need to get, if you're doing this, it's important to get people who represent and look like your audience. So don't, if your audience is 18 to 24, don't get a 60-year-old wearing your merch. Limited runs is another good idea, which kind of goes back to the scarcity concept. So you can do a limited run of items. Supreme is famous for doing this. So you can do a limited run of t-shirts or shades or whatever with a special print and have it available only for a limited time. And also, don't overextend your merch. So don't get excited and do a bunch of different things at once. You may, especially if you can afford it, you maybe get excited and say, okay, I want to do all these 5 different things, but it will just divert your attention and it will be too much for fans. And it can also lead to you getting into debt. So choose maybe the best 1 or 2 ideas to go with first, and these would be the ideas that most people will buy into. Okay, so I have some helpful hints, some helpful links here for merch supplies, e-commerce, and some local designers, and some resources. So the merch supplies that I have listed here are online. I saw somebody, I think it was Danny or Rochelle, talking about local suppliers. I did not know if I could include the local suppliers that we have, if I can include their contact information, but I just want to put them out. But I do have that information. So if you do want contacts for local suppliers, you can reach out to me. And my thumbnail is covering the my contact information, but I'll tell you what it is shortly. I have the e-commerce solutions and the local designers. I've used or worked with Richard and Tracey. They're two of my friends. Richard actually did Lynchpin's rebranding and logo that we love. Tracey did the logo for We Are the Shepherd. And I've not worked with Royalty Club, but I've admired their work from afar. I know that they've worked with big soca artists. I know that they've worked with popular party committees and a lot of other people. I really like the work that they do. And some resources at the bottom here for a continuation if you want to know more about merchandising. Some of these links talk a bit about what I've mentioned, but they also go into like other different ideas that you can do. You could really just pick any one of these links and start off from there. I'll leave this up when I go to the questions in case you want to take down more of the information. Before we go to the questions, I have my special thanks to MusicTT, Marty and Mariella for having me, for Marty and Mariella for helping me out with this presentation. I had a lot going on in my life recently, and Marty especially really helped me out with this, and Mariella as well. To Sivan, Aaron, Jiggy, and especially Chris for helping with the content. My family and friends who have supported me along my journey. Everyone who has bought our merch and supported us throughout the years, and everyone who has tuned in today and will eventually see this webinar. So if you have any questions, now is the time to ask, and I'll leave up the links while that comes in. Were there any questions, Marty, while I was...
Daniel was asking about local suppliers. If you want to just call them out, that's fine. For merch.
Yeah. Let's see. So most recently, Lynchpin has used, finding it, Varma Ramlogan, and his number is 778-9135, and Tony Ramdat 775-4434. So they've done our most recent run of merch. You want Tony's number as well?
Yeah.
Sure. Go back to it. All of a sudden, I can't find it. Jeez. All right. Tony, 775-4434.
What's the name, Tony?
Ramdath, Ramdath. I've not met Vamo. Actually, I think I did meet Vamo. I think they're both really great guys as well. Tony really helped us out recently with some T-shirts that we've done. And if you want to reach out to me, my information, I can't move the thumbnail. On Instagram, I am Gerard, Gerard.f. On Facebook, I'm just Gerard Ferreira. And my WhatsApp, if you want to reach out to me, is 780-4198. If you have any other questions on merchandising or marketing or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, Rochelle. Any other? I'm just going through the chat to see if there were any other questions. And no, I'm not on Fiverr yet, but I do want to go on Fiverr at some point. And as the thing about Fiverr, though, I acknowledge and respect that it's a really good way to get a lot of things done for not a lot of money. But the age-old saying holds true for Fiverr, that you get what you pay for. So I've seen people come to me with logos that they've gotten from Fiverr that they've paid $10 US for, $5 US for, whatever. And it's not that good of a logo, to be honest. Somebody locally can do a much better logo and talk to you about what you want in the logo, that sort of thing. So Fiverr is good if you're very low on funds. But if you just put a little bit more, you could probably find a local person who can help you, especially if you want to do a design or something like that. No other questions? And yes, Danny, very much so. I think that there are a lot of, not just rock, a lot of artists in general that I've seen in Trinidad who are completely missing sales from not doing merch. Merch is so easy to do. Like, the process that I went through may sound or seem daunting, but you implicitly will know at least some of that information. Knowing your brand may take a while if you want to do it in depth, but you don't need to do it in depth. You know who you are as an artist already. Knowing who your audience is, you probably have an idea, and you can find out just by having conversations with people. And from there, it's just really getting the design and ordering and promoting and all that stuff. Is like you're probably already doing some of that for your music as well. So just add that merch onto it. And merch can be, don't underestimate how much revenue you can make from merch, because you can do a large amount of small cost things and get a lot of revenue from that. So yes, it is leaving money on the table, especially if you're a popular artist. Are CD sales still relevant in 2020? This, I have, if it were up to me personally, our last album would have been sold on memory sticks. I have seen, like, anytime I hear somebody buying a new computer, I always make the joke, so you're not going to get CDs then, because I always think that new computers are not going to have CD drives. Some of them still do. So I think that CD sales, to an extent, are still relevant, but it's more for nostalgia and more for a keepsake item than actually somebody going to use your CD. I have a friend who just recently migrated, and she said she had our CD. So I said, oh, okay, cool, thanks for taking it. And she's taking it with her. So I made a joke, oh, so you're just taking it for so, because you're not going to be able to play it where you're going, because you're not going to have a CD player. And she's like, oh, crap, you're right. So I think that CDs, you have to understand that if you're doing CDs, I don't recommend doing the same number of CDs that you might have done 10 years ago. Produce CDs with the intention that it will be more for a keepsake or collectible item, and that people will get your music. One person will rip that CD and then send it to everybody. Like, people will get your music anyway. As I said, your music is sort of like a loss leader, meaning that your music is something that is great and will get people towards you, but it's not going to make a lot of money. So don't expect to get money from your CD sales. It's really a promotional item at this point. Standpipe had a decent amount of merch and sold them. Right. And that's a good point as well, Cutter. That, well, Standpipe is Alan, and Alan is known in the rock circle. So I'm sure that he would have had some supporters buying his merch before he actually came out as Standpipe. And that goes back to what I was saying, that especially if you have a name from something else, it helps for you to promote your merch before you even launch the career that is attached to your merch. And yeah, it's all about streaming platforms now. So most people are going to have their songs on YouTube, and it's so easy. And as the thing, I think only musicians and audiophiles care about the quality of music. Marty could correct me if I'm wrong here, but and he's resigning himself to say yes, because he is one of those people that cares about the quality of music. But most people will just rip a song from YouTube and use that and be happy with it. What do you mean, Kata, about it's according to the money? What's your thoughts on bundling merch items and cross-brand relationships? Example, partner with other artists in your genre and scene. Right. So I spoke, or I mentioned loosely or in passing about doing associations or partnerships. But I kind of mentioned that only with businesses. But yeah, so bundling merch is a good way to promote the merch itself, but it can also make people think that they're getting a deal. And you should also do it as a sort of deal. So if you have a CD, a t-shirt, and a towel, you can offer that for slightly less than you would offer the three together, and people might be more willing to buy it because people like deals. Cross-brand relationships, I am in favor of it, and I support cross-brand relationships. I don't think it is done very well right now. I think especially because Brian is asking this, but even if he wasn't, I would use Boat Shrimp as an example here, because Boat Shrimp is, if you don't know, Boat Shrimp is a collective or a label, a local label of I can't say rock because it's punk as well, but of bands. And it's very easy for people under that to cross-brand, so that you can just promote the Boat Shrimp bands and have you buy an Anti t-shirt and you get a Spectral t-shirt at a discount, or you just buy an Anti and a Spectral t-shirt for $200 or $150 or something like that. I really like that idea, but I don't think it is done well. I think that you need to understand which fans are going to buy this and understand your fans, because you may cross-brand with a band that your fans will not respond to. So because the rock scene is so fragmented to an extent here as well in terms of the genres, some fans may appreciate wanting to buy a Lynchpin t-shirt and an Anti-Everything t-shirt. But some people may not like Lynchpin and only like Anti, so they won't buy that bundle. So bundling is a good idea. Cross-brand relationships is a good idea, but you have to be smart about that strategy. Yeah, Danny, I've went to festivals and seen the merch for artists that I didn't know about. Thought the merch was cool. I didn't buy it though, again, because I didn't know the merch and I had finite funds, so I wanted to spend my money on something that I didn't know. But then those artists blew up afterwards, and I was like, crap, I should have bought that merch when I had the chance. So yes, our top artists can promote or encourage the buying of other merch as well. I used an Asylum link in an Asylum picture, or picture of Asylum, which is our sort of brother band from Suriname here, because I really enjoy what they are doing from their social media posts, and I really love their music as well. And locally, merch-wise, I really like what Clavium is doing. I really like Clavium and Anti-Everything as well, actually. They're two of the bands that I think are always on their merch game and really strong on merchandise. Graphic design quality. Yeah, It is tied to money. You do get what you pay for. Good point as well, Denny. We did have a series called Digging Up the Underground. Unfortunately, I was not here for it. That was Sivan and they. And it was a great cross-branding from a band perspective aspect because it brought a lot of bands together for this tour. But did they have merch for Digging Up the Underground? I know Digging Up the Underground had merch, but did the bands themselves have merch?
Some of them did.
Yeah, but yeah, so they were Digging Up the Underground t-shirts with the bands on it as well. If we did that again and we had bands to do that, a good idea might be to do a band collective for that show and then have the bands all get some sort of funds from that specific t-shirt. That'd be a cool idea. All right. Do we wait for more questions or wrap it up?
I think that could be good there.
Okay. So we're about to wrap up. If there are no more questions, I'll leave 1 minute for any last minute questions. This is where we play some Jeopardy music. And thank you, Kata. Thank you all for tuning in again and asking your questions and engaging. I really appreciated it. And with your good points in the chat. Okay, so that's it. Thank you all for tuning in. And feel free to message me if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out to MusicTT for their series. They have some really awesome stuff going on. There are some great people involved with Marty and Mariella. So if you have any questions on that, you can reach out to them as well. Take care.